Chapter 2 of Tractate, Kiddushin continues going through the laws of betrothal. The Mishnah says, a man can betroth a woman in person or through an agent. A woman can accept a betrothal in person or through an agent. A father can give his daughter to be betrothed during the middle stage of adulthood, either in person or through an agent. The Gemara says it specifies betrothal in person to teach that it's a far greater thing to do mitzvahs personally, as we see many sages took personal involvement in the preparation of food for Shabbos, for instance. Some actually hold a man is forbidden to betroth a woman through an agent if he'd never seen her, in case he ends up not being attracted to her. So this would say the part where it says a woman can accept betrothal in person shows that's preferable, and it's permitted to use an agent, as typically they prefer to be married to anybody over not being married at all. Additionally, the specification that a father can betroth his daughter during the middle stages of adulthood, right at the beginning of stages of physical development, is specified to show that a father should not betroth his daughter when she's a minor, and in fact, in accordance with the opinion that holds it's outright forbidden to do so. It cites scriptural source for the concept that a man can use an agent in his place to deliver particular documents by divorce and also by betrothal and by other areas. It goes through the sources for the permissibility of the appointment of an agent for bringing teruma, for the bringing of the paschal offering and other sacrifices, and it also tries to find additional logical sources besides for scriptural ones to learn these out from the others based on their similarities. These are discussed. These sources are spoken on further and additionally on principles of the court's division of a minor orphan's land. These are for the qualified. It also questions the established principle that a person's agent is legally considered to be like his sender by everything, as it says in a later tractate, Bava Kama, that if somebody sent an agent who is mentally competent with fire and he burned something down, the agent alone is liable. So shouldn't the sender also be? So it's explained that the man was sent to commit a transgression, and there's no legal principle of sending somebody to commit a transgression. There is a particular exception to this mentioned by the laws of Me'ilah, benefiting off of consecrated property, but that's uniquely based on a verse. It also brings sources for the liability of a man and his agent by the stealing of an animal to slaughter and sell it, making there be two exceptions to this rule, that there's no legal principle of an agent by a transgression. The validity of the sources for this are discussed. There's a debate as to if an agent was sent to carry out a transaction, if he can additionally act as a witness to the transaction. The logic of why not is because the agent acts as the sender himself, and the sender cannot be a witness to his own transaction. It's debated, but it's held that an agent can still also act as an agent. Based on this principle, it said a man can send two agents to betroth a woman for him, both as agents and witnesses, and he can also do this for divorce and monetary cases. All three of these were necessary to list, as betrothal limits the woman, and both agents wouldn't be able to marry her, so there's no worry of false testimony of divorce. And this is unlike by monetary law, where there's a concern they might try to keep the item in question. It's such discussion which questions the allowance of using agents as witnesses for monetary matters. In regards to a betrothed Na'ara from her father, as we mentioned in Tractate Gittin, both she and her father can accept her divorce document. Others disagreed, saying you can't have two people doing this, so it's only her father that can accept it, and if the girl cannot take care of her divorce document, she can't become divorced. Some say these principles don't just apply to divorce, they also apply to betrothal. Others disagree. The difference is that betrothal would remove herself from her father's jurisdiction, unlike by divorce. This logic is debated at length, although based on a recorded incident, divorce and betrothal are not strictly comparable by these laws, and only a father can accept his daughter's betrothal. Additionally, it's held that a Na'ara cannot appoint an agent to accept her divorce document, and only a father can do this. It had said, if a minor had been betrothed to be married once she becomes an adult and she asks somebody at this stage to get her divorce document, she can't appoint an agent, so she's only divorced, canceling her betrothal once she herself received the document. It tries to learn from this that a Na'ara would be able to appoint an agent herself. Additionally, if a minor somehow accepted a betrothal without her father's knowledge, which is not permissible or legally valid, some held she must get a divorce document and also do miyun to legally refuse the marriage. The divorce document is in case the father decides to permit the betrothal, and miyun is in case he does not, and it's to prevent people from seeing this and thinking that such a thing is legally valid. This all only applies if the betrother and the father had been discussing betrothal prior. If there wasn't even such a notion, there's no validity whatsoever, and it's completely null and void. Others simply hold either way it was completely forbidden, so miyun isn't even necessary, as there's no legal permissibility to this betrothal. It debates these opinions. In the event that an individual impermissibly betrothed a minor without the father's knowledge, and then the betrother died, meaning the principle of the levirate marriage would theoretically apply, the girl can circumvent this by doing miyun, refusing this marriage, although she can just do nothing, as this really wasn't legally allowed in the first place. If she does want to legally separate fully from the brother-in-law, she'd need a bill of divorce in case the father decided to allow the second betrothal, and she'd need chalitza in case the father allowed the first betrothal, and she'd need miyun in case the father allowed neither. So in this way, she won't be married to anybody, and nobody will think this was permissible. If the brother-in-law did not try to betroth her also, she'd only require chalitza, and she would not need miyun, as nobody will think that brother-in-law can marry her sisters, which is a rabbinic principle, and the source is cited. There's also a cited incident where two parents decided to betroth their children to each other, but it was ruled to be invalid as the son hadn't been asked, and we don't assume he would have consented to this, as this opinion holds that we also don't assume a parent would consent to the betrothal of their child without being informed of it either. It additionally says, if somebody tries to betroth a minor, it's impermissible for all of the above listed reasons, but additionally, there's not even a principle of concern of the father agreeing to it if the betrothal was done in a demeaning manner, like handing her some vegetables. So there wouldn't even need to be a necessity for divorce or similar. It goes through similar cases, and what if after such a betrothal later on, the husband additionally tries to do nisuin, the final stage of marriage, without the father's approval? The validity of this is debated between several opinions. Additionally, if a minor was impermissibly betrothed to a man, some say the girl or her father are allowed to reject it, some say only the father can, it's debated. New Mishnah. If a man asks a woman to become betrothed to him through a date, and then hands her another one asking her to be betrothed through it, if one of the dates is worth the minimum value of a pruta, she's betrothed. If not, then she's not. If he hands her a number of dates and says she should be betrothed with this, and with this, referencing the dates, she's betrothed if the value of all of them is at least a pruta. If, as he was giving them, the woman was eating each one, he's only betrothed if one of them had the value of a pruta. The Gemara discusses particularities on these cases. It's argued as to which case the wife eating the date is referring to. Some say it's actually in the first clause, some say it refers to the second one, meaning she'd only be betrothed if the last date she eats was worth a pruta. It's argued on. Additionally, if a man betrothed his sister by giving her money, obviously this is not allowed. Some say she must return the money as it was given as a deposit, some say she keeps it as it was given as a gift, and he did it like this because he didn't want to embarrass her. It argues some principles in the laws of challah tithes. The case of giving food to a woman as betrothal, as she eats it, is discussed, and it said, if the man said, become betrothed to me with these, even if the woman eats them as he gives them, it already all belongs to her, so they're accumulated to form her betrothal. Some would suggest it's the last item that must be worth the parota, as previously mentioned. Others disagree based on the author. Additionally, it's held that if a betrothal is done with a loan, it's invalid as those are meant to be spent. It also brings a related instance where a man offered to betroth a woman with 100 coins and gives it to her, and they then realize it was only 99, meaning he's now in debt. Some say it's embarrassing for her to demand it, so it's an invalid betrothal. Others disagree. This is unlike the earlier mentioned case where he only gave 1 coin, as it's a lot less embarrassing to demand the full 99 coin remaining sum there. Additionally, in regards to betrothal through a loan, if a man offered to betroth somebody through an item of his, which is in her deposit, and she finds that it was lost or stolen, it's still allowed if there's a pruta of the item left. However, this would hold if a man lent a woman money and is now allowing her to keep it for betrothal. Even if the woman spent it all and there's none left, the betrothal would still be valid. Others disagree, saying it's the same as a deposit and there must be a pruta left. The principles of this debate are additionally discussed. If it debates the validity of betrothal through a loan, either with a debt document or with an oral loan, these principles are discussed. In Mishnah, if a man betrothed a woman by giving her a cup of wine and then afterwards finds out it was a cup of honey, or vice versa, or if he betrothed her with a silver coin and then finds out it was a gold coin, or vice versa, or she betrothed him on condition that he's rich and then it turns out he's poor, or vice versa, in all these cases she's not betrothed. Others say if the husband misled her, but in a way that it turns out it is actually better for her, it would still be valid. The Gemara explains, if a man betrothed a woman with a cup, some say she gets the cup and what's inside of it, others say she just gets the cup, and other sources say she only gets what's inside of the cup. This is because the first case is where it's filled with water, the second is where it's filled with wine, and the third is where it's filled with brine. In regards to the opinion that the betrothal works if the woman was misled to her advantage, this is a difficult principle to establish, as some people prefer different things. Some would rather vinegar over wine, some would prefer silver over gold, etc. Some suggest that actually what he holds is that the case is where the woman told an agent to accept her betrothal, saying she was told she was promised a silver coin, and the agent was then given a wrapped up gold coin. Some say the woman meant she'd only accept the silver coin, while this other opinion is establishing she was just giving an example and would be fine with this also. This is further qualified. There are additional points on this, and it said regarding the woman gaining an advantage due to the man actually having a more distinguished lineage, for instance. It's agreed that the betrothal is nevertheless invalid, as the woman might not want to marry a husband who will act haughty, so it's not necessarily to her benefit. We bring sources for this principle which are discussed. It also cites other particular conditions on a betrothal. For instance, if the man said she should betroth him on condition that he read scripture, some say he must read a minimum of 3 verses in a synagogue, some say he must be able to read and translate. If he gives the condition that he's a scriptural expert, he must prove he can read all of Chumash, Nevi'im, prophets, and Kesuvim, writings. If he says it's conditional that he studies, some say he must study laws, some say he must study Torah, particularly Midrash. There are other stipulations mentioned. If he says he's a student, he must be able to answer at least a single question from the tractate he's studying, even if it's an easier one. If he said it's conditional that he's wise, he must be able to at least respond to a question in something that requires skill of reasoning. If the betrothal condition was that he's strong, he must be at least at the level of strength enough that his peers fear his strength. If they agree that the betrothal is conditional on the fact that he's wealthy, he must at least be honored by his town due to his wealth. If the condition was that he's righteous, she can betroth herself to him even if he's completely wicked, as there's a possibility he had a thought of repentance. If he betrothed on condition that he's a wicked man, she can be betrothed to him even if he's righteous, as it's a possibility that he had a thought to commit idolatry. Additionally, it said that 10 measures of wisdom were given to the world, 9 of which went to the land of Israel, and the rest to the world. 10 measures of beauty went to the world, 9 of which went to Jerusalem, and the rest to the world. 10 measures of wealth went to the world, the early Romans took 9, and the rest went to the world. 10 measures of poverty went to the world, 9 of which went to Babylonia, and it says 10 measures of arrogance were given to the world, which sourced in Babylon, but eventually the 9 portions wound up in Elam. The verse sources for these principles are discussed. Additionally, 10 measures of might were given to the world, 9 of which were given to the Persians. 10 measures of lice were given to the world, 9 of which went to Media. 10 measures of witchcraft went to the world, 9 of which went to Egypt. 10 measures of disease went to the world, 9 of which went to pigs. 10 measures of promiscuity went to the world, 9 of which went to Arabia. 10 measures of brazenness went to the world, 9 of which went to Meshan. 10 measures of conversation went to the world, 9 of which went to women. 10 measures of drunkenness went to the world, 9 of which went to Ethiopians. And 10 measures of sleep were given to the world, 9 of which went to slaves. New Mishnah. If a man betrothed a woman on condition that he was a Cohen, but then she found out he was a Levi, or vice versa, or that he was one of the Nessanites, a descendant of the biblical Gibeonites, and it turns out that he was illegitimate, or vice versa, or on condition that he lived in a town and then she found out he lived in a city, or vice versa, or on condition that his house was near a bathhouse and it turns out it was far, or vice versa, or on condition that he has an adult daughter or maidservant and he does not, or vice versa, or on condition that he has no children and he does, or vice versa. In all these instances, even if the woman afterwards says she was fine with the betrothal anyways after finding out, it's still an invalid betrothal, and this all applies also if the woman was the one misleading the man. The Gemara sets a case. If a man sold his possessions specifically to move to Israel, but he didn't say so, and was then unable to move to Israel, it said the sale still retains its validity, as unspecified intentions are not legally recognized. It debates at length as to what the source for this is. Alternatively, if the man sold his possessions with the expressed intent to go to Israel, but then changed his mind, some say the sale stands, as he could have gone if he wanted to, others say the same, with slightly different wording, the difference being that if he heard about a danger and decided not to go, according to the second opinion, it would annul the sale. New Mishnah. If a man tells his agent to betroth a specific woman in a specific location, and he betrothed her somewhere else, this is not a valid betrothal. If he only told the agent that she happens to be in a specific place, the agent can betroth her wherever he wants. The Gemara says the same principle essentially was established within the laws of the divorce document delivery in the prior tractate. This is repeated here, as betrothal could be viewed differently, as people in different specific regions might dislike or like the husband, and he could want specific people near the woman when he offers the betrothal. It needs to be mentioned by divorce, as perhaps this is unique, as the husband is fine being embarrassed in a specific location, but not in another. New Mishnah. If a man betrothed a woman on condition that she has no standing vows, and he finds out afterwards that she did, there is no betrothal. If he married her without this stipulation, and then found out that she had standing vows, he can divorce her without paying the marriage contract. If a man betrothed a woman on condition that she has no bodily defects, and then finds that she has them, there is no betrothal. If he married her without this stipulation and finds that she has physical defects, if the defect is bad enough that it would disqualify a Kohen from service in the temple, he can divorce without needing to pay the marriage contract. The Gemara says this was additionally stated within the laws of Kesubos of the marriage contract, but it was said there as it related additionally to the marriage contract, and was stated here as it relates additionally to betrothal. New Mishnah. If a man betrothed 2 women with an item worth a pruta, giving half to each, or to 1 woman with an item worth less than a pruta, even if he sends bridal gifts after, there was no betrothal, as we don't assume the gifts are part of a new betrothal. This would even apply if a minor boy was betrothed, and then sent the secondary betrothal gift upon becoming an adult. The Gemara explains the necessity of these cases, saying it needed the point on bridal gifts, where unlike the half coins, he's sending in an entirely new item, possibly for betrothal. And by the minor, everybody knows, and it has been well established that a minor cannot be betrothed, so it also needs to establish the latter gift as non-functioning. Some say generally there is actually a concern that a bridal gift is considered to be a part of betrothal. It debates this, and it said, if the custom of the locale is to give a betrothal before gifts, a gift brought first could act as a betrothal. Otherwise, if gifts are typically brought first, it would just be viewed as a gift, even if a minority do otherwise. Another point, if a marriage contract is just found in a market, it said if the custom is to betroth before receiving a marriage contract, we assume the woman on the document is betrothed. Otherwise, no. Even if a scribe is not available in the location, we don't assume the husband found one. New Mishnah. If a man betrothed a woman and her daughter, or a woman and her sister at the same time, neither of them are betrothed. Once there were 5 women together, 2 of which were sisters. A man took a basket of figs that belonged to the woman and said they should all be betrothed to him through it, and one woman accepted it on behalf of all of them, and it was ruled that everybody in the group was betrothed besides for the 2 sisters. The Gemara cites sources for these principles from verses. It also qualifies points on tithes by this discussion. Additionally, it's debated if betrothal that does not facilitate legal cohabitation, whether that's still a valid betrothal, which is relevant by this discussion of betrothing relatives. The remaining particularities of these debates are qualified in regards to this debate if betrothal is valid even if cohabitation in the situation is not permitted, which is debated from a number of sources. There's a case where 2 unrelated men betrothed 2 sisters and neither knew which she betrothed. So it says that each man must divorce both. However, this is not comparable here, as the men knew who the sisters were at the time of betrothal, and the case was only brought to say in the event that both men died, leaving a brother, that they must do chalitza with each. If one left 1 brother and one left 2 brothers, the single brother does chalitza with both, and one of the other brothers does chalitza, and the other can do yibum. If both brothers married a sister, they don't need a divorce. This is to specify the order, that the single brother does chalitza before any of the others do yibum. It tries to bring other instances to debate if betrothal is allowed when cohabitation is not, and it holds that it would still be a valid betrothal if done when cohabitation in the situation was forbidden. Based on the cited incident with the betrothal of 5 women, it can learn that betrothal with produce from the Shavuos sabbatical year is valid, as was described in that particular case. It learns that betrothal with stolen goods is not valid, and this applies even if the stolen goods belong to the woman. How this is sourced is described. Additionally, it can be learned that a woman can become an agent for another woman for betrothal, even though by doing so they become co-wives who are considered to be rivals and can't testify about each other for a number of things. These principles are additionally debated. It gives some instances on the impermissibility of betrothal via a stolen document. New Mishnah. If a person, a Kohen, betrothed a woman using his portion of a sacrificial offering, whether with kadshe kachim, most holy portions, or kadshe kalim, of lesser holiness, this is not a valid betrothal. If he betrothed the woman using ma'is or sheni tithes on purpose or on accident, this is not a valid betrothal. Some say it's only allowed if it was intentional. If a man betrothed a woman using consecrated property, it's valid if done on purpose, but not if done on accident. Others say it's valid if done on accident, but not if done on purpose. The Gemara discusses the principles of these points along with some related incidents. The points on particular offerings are additionally qualified. These points are discussed further. It also qualifies the impermissibility of benefiting from consecrated produce in regards to the prohibitions of me'ila. Additionally, regarding the dispute over betrothal through consecrated produce, it's debated which opinion we hold like, if it's valid if done unknowingly or knowingly. There's further discussion on the points on consecrated property related to this, and there are a few opinions as to who we hold like. There's further opinions on the laws of consecration of produce as to whether it has validity in either way. It also discusses some laws regarding animals found near Jerusalem, if they're presumed to be consecrated, and towards which offering, and if so, what needs to be brought along with them. In regards to attempting betrothal via ma'is or sheni tithes, it clarifies this is dealing with a learned woman who is aware of the fact that these funds will remain consecrated even if she accepts them as betrothal. There are related points. New Mishnah. If a man betrothed a woman using orla, the forbidden fruits of the first 3 years of a tree, with kilayim, forbidden mixtures from a vineyard, with an ox that had been condemned to be stoned, using an egla arufa, a calf that was to be decapitated, with birds from the mitzorah, someone who has leprosy impurity, from his offering, from hair of a nazir, from a firstborn male donkey, with a mixture of milk cooked with meat, or with unconsecrated animals slaughtered in the temple courtyard, all things that a person is forbidden to benefit from, the betrothal is invalid. If the man transgressed and sold one of these items, and then betrothed the woman using the funds from the sale, that is a valid betrothal. The Gemara cites scriptural sources for all of these principles, that each of them is forbidden to be benefited from. This goes further, and it disputes regarding the birds of the mitzorah offering as to when they become forbidden to be used. Some say at the time of slaughter, as that's when they become forbidden. Others say at the time the birds were designated for this, as it's the same as the mitzorah himself. Both are forbidden while they're still alive. Some say the Egla Arufa becomes forbidden to be used at the point where it's brought down into the valley. It debates these opinions from related discussions. It also argues if particular verses imply as to when the birds become forbidden or remain permitted, which is discussed further. The point on the firstborn male donkey, it's actually an argument if you can't benefit from it, so this is clarified to be talking about after the animal was killed, where everybody agrees it can't be benefited from. It brings sources for the prohibition against benefiting from a mixture of meat and milk. Of course, as the verse says, you can't cook a kid in its mother's milk, which is stated 3 separate times throughout the Torah, once to prohibit eating, once to prohibit benefiting, and once to prohibit cooking them together. The sources for the prohibitions of using unconsecrated animals slaughtered in the temple courtyard are brought and discussed. It brings proofs that eating of such meat is forbidden, and then additional ones that even benefiting from them is additionally prohibited. It also quotes sources for the fact that if they're sold, that's not allowed. But if somebody did, the funds can be used for betrothal, and it specifies that by idolatry, an idol's payment is specifically treated like the idol, implying other things don't have this stringency. New Mishnah. If somebody betrothed a woman with terumos or ma'aseros tithes, with the gift portions of an offering, with chatas offering water or ashes, this is a valid betrothal, even if the man is a Yisrael and not a Kohen. The Gemara says, in opinion, that the right to choose which Kohen you give your tithes to is not of sufficient value to create a betrothal. Our case in the Mishnah is where the Yisrael man has actual untithed produce inherited from his maternal grandfather, who was a Kohen, and this portion here is considered to be as if it was already tithed. It debates if the right to choose the Kohen to give tithes to, if that's considered to be valid as equity. This is debated. Additionally, a separate source implies that ash water of offerings would not be permissible, so it's explained that our source refers to payment for working to transport ash water, while that referenced payment for sprinkling ash water, which isn't really work. This is implied from the wording, and that's the end of chapter 2.